In part 1 of my video, we installed Siril and the various scripts and prepared everything for today's video, in which now we'll be doing stacking, which is basically taking the light frames, the hundreds of light frames that you took, as well as the calibration frames, and putting them all together to create one final image. And for those of you who put the comments down below in part 1 of the video, the logo was the other way around. So I have it correct. Thank you very much, everyone, for your comments. My name is Shuin Kashi, and you're watching Astro Island. So we have Siril open and ready to begin the stacking process. And if you recall from my previous video, part 1, we spoke about the working folder, which, as you can see right here to the very top, you'll see I have it stored as F Siril Karina, which is basically where I will be working, where all of my files to be stacked will be stored. And for you, in your instance, you can select wherever you have your files. And again, just to recall, to get there, you can click on the home button and you can select exactly where your files are stored. And remember, it needs to be, the folders need to be saved exactly as you see it here, where it says biases, darks, flats, and lights. Now, there are two ways in which we can do the stacking process. One would be the automatic way, which I would consider like a quick and dirty way. And I usually use that in terms of, let's say I captured a few images one night and I just want to see quickly what the results were. There's another way that I recommend doing it, which is now the manual way, in which you have much more control and much more selection as to how you would like the results of your final stack to be. So let's get to it. First, we're going to go through the automatic method by going to scripts, Siril scripts, and OSA pre-processing. Now, if you don't see this here, refer to my previous video, and I'm going to have the link in the description down below on how to get this particular Siril script, as well as all of these that are available here, based on what you want to do with your processing. But of course, in today's video, we're going to be using the OSC pre-processing script. So we just click on it, and it's going to do its thing. It's going to be stacking all of the images and the calibration frames which we took from before. So the stacking process is complete, and it took approximately 4 minutes 22 seconds. And as I said, this is just what I would consider a quick and dirty way of stacking all of your images. Now, if we go into the working folder, which as you can see was Astrophotography Siril Karina, you would see I still have my biases, darks, flats, lights. And during the stacking process, it created two other folders, process and masters, as well as the final result. So if you go into the process folder, you'd have seen all of the processes that took place inside of there, creating biases, darks, conversion of the files, as well as if we go into masters, we'll see all of the master files when the calibrations would have been done. And then of course we have the results when you stack all of the calibration frames as well as the stack of the light frames, it creates your final result. So let's open it up in Siril and see how it looks. So we go to open, we look for it here, back in that same folder, result fit, and we click on open, and there we have it. We see nothing. And that's because, remember, even though yes, it has been stacked, everything is now in what you call a linear state, where all of the images that you took, all of the calibration frames that you took are more or less what we say squished together in a linear state. And now we just want to have a quick visual representation of how the image would look. So we click on linear, as I mentioned, it's in its linear state, and we click on auto stretch. And there you have it. This is the image that I took of the Carina Nebula But of course, you can see it's all green, the stars are a little discolored, and you noticed you're seeing some of this here. And I think this may have been while imaging. I started imaging where a tree was. So you're now beginning to see some of the branches, and you're seeing a little bit of light maybe from a house nearby or something. And this is what I'm speaking about. When you do the automatic stacking, you have almost no control as to what you can and can't select with your images. So now I'm going to show you how to do it the manual way, in which you now will have much more control. See which images you want to keep and which images you want to discard. So let's go over now and start doing the manual stacking. So we're going to do the manual process now. I'm going to go back into that folder where all of the stacking took place. I'm going to create a new folder called automatic. And what I intend to do is just basically take each of these here, the new folders and the file that Siril would have created during the automatic stacking process, and just move it inside of automatic just for now. We're going to go back into Siril, and we're going to go now into the conversion tab. And what we wanted to know is begin converting each of the files or each of the steps separately. So first we go to the plus sign, we look for the lights, and I actually did this intentionally. So again, to show you guys how things can happen and what needs to happen when you're doing the manual process. So for those of you who use a DSLR camera, when you take all of the light frames, it may come out in a what you call and the extension may be a CR3 file, which is the extension, and it's basically the format in which most cameras take the images. I took a one-shot color and I used subframe selector in another software, and the output actually created in an XISF file. But Siril only reads everything, all of the images and all of the calibrations in FITS files, FIT. So we want to create, or actually we want to convert all of these light frames from an XISF extension to now readable by Siril called FIT. So we select all of them, we click add. So all of them now are in the conversion tab. And because we are using a one-shot cut, in my instance a one-shot color, we're going to leave the bear disabled. We're not going to touch that, and we're just going to call this light, or lights if you want. And actually let me create another folder, and I'm going to call this process. Now we created that process folder, very much similar to when the automatic steps occur, it creates a process folder. So more or less we're gonna mimic most of the steps as close as possible to keep things as easy and understandable. So we click on we created the process folder, and now inside of Siril, instead of going to F Siril Karina, we go back to the home button and we go inside of the process folder this time, and we click on open, and as you can see it now changes to F Siril Karina process. So that way now, during the manual process, everything now will be stored inside of that particular folder. So as mentioned, we include all of the light frames, we give it a name, the sequence name lights, we leave everything else as default, and again we do not click on the bear, and we click on convert. And that took less than a second or thereabouts. So if we go now into that folder, process, we see the lights that were just converted from XISF, and as you can see now, it's now in FIT format. We want to continue doing the same with the, now instead of the lights, we're going to do the same with the calibration frame. So we're going to do it with the darks, the biases or dark flats, and the flat frames. So again, we go through the same process. We click on conversion, and this time we're just going to clear this out to remove all of that, the light frames. We're done with it for now. So remove that. We click on the plus sign, we go back out one, and this time we're going to choose let's choose the biases, or in my case I have them as dark flats. Select all, click add, and this time I'm going to, instead of lights, we're going to change it to dark flats. Always remember to keep in mind to ensure that it's still in the process folder. Always keep your eye on that just in case of anything. So we leave it as dark flats, everything else as is, and convert. And as you can see, you have an auto stretch version of your dark flats. I forgot that I have it as auto stretch, so that's really actually a good thing that you can see the results of your conversion. And if we go now into the folder, let's come out, process, we go have the dark flats created now in Siril. See, and because they were already fits files, instead of doing the conversion, because it's already fits, instead of creating duplicates, it just created links to the actual fits files. And again, in my previous video, I showed you, instead of having copies of files being done where it can take up a lot of storage, Siril instead creates links, and that's by going into developer mode. And again, I'm just going to show you quickly. Here, we click on the start, developer mode, or developer settings, I should say, and just ensure that this is enabled, and that's it. Once this is enabled, you're good to go. It creates links instead of actual copies of the file. So now we're going to do, moving back to Siril, we go to conversion, we clear this off, click on the plus sign, and so we just did the biases, and now we're going to do the dark frames. So we select them all, click on add, and I'm just going to call these darks. All right, and we click on convert. All right, and that, again, these are in Siril, it moves pretty quickly, and this now is an auto stretch version of the dark frame. And this that you're seeing here on the right hand side is a question that has been asked on many different forums, whether it be PixInsight, Siril, or just general learning astrophotography. This is what you call amp glow. My particular one-shot color cooled camera does or gives off what is called amp glow. So if you're taking images on your camera, you see this sort of spray, if you want to call it that spray of light on the right, or maybe to the left side, or sometimes on both sides. You can actually see a little bit coming on both sides. That's called amp glow. That's pretty normal for these types of cameras. The newer model of cameras, you don't see this. So for example, the ASI 533 series of cameras, or sometimes the ASI 2600 series of cameras, and many other cameras, many of the newer cameras, they now have the feature that does not have amp glow. So in my instance, this is pretty normal. This is quite all right. Don't panic. Everything, we can continue as usual. So now if we go back into the folder that has processes, you'll see dark flats and the darks. They too have also been created as links, because those files already fits files. Now, just quickly going back to the amp glow, and this is the purpose of calibration frames. Once you have all of your calibration frames in place, it usually removes any of the various anomalies, if you want to call it that, in your images. Now, you would have heard me speak about, let's go to it, biases or dark flats, flat darks, flats, etc. Let me know in the comments down below, would you like me to do a separate video on how to take calibration frames? I want to see your comments. Give me a thumbs up, hell yeah, or hell no. You've seen countless of those videos. Thumbs down, hell no. You don't want to see those. You don't want to see another video. You're tired of seeing them. But I would really like to hear, to see your comments in the description down below if you would like to see another video on how to take calibration frames separately. Right, but quickly going back, we've done the darks. So we've done the dark frames. Oh, my apologies. In the process folder. So we've done the dark frames, and like I mentioned, these are also shortcuts. Going back now, we're now going to do the flat frames. So again, we go back to conversion. We clear this off. We click on the plus sign, and we go back one, and we go now to the flats. Select all, click on add, and I'm just going to call these flats. All right, again, leave everything as is, and we just click on convert. Execution time again, almost less than a second, and go switching back to the folder. We now have the flat frames converted. So we have everything ready and available. We have the flats. So we have the flats, the dark flats, or again, biases. And again, just for this video, I'm just going to call them dark flats. So we have the dark flats, darks, flats, and your light frames. So now that we've done all of the conversions, it's time to create the master calibration files. So we're going to be creating the master darks, flats, and dark flats. So to do that, we go into the sequence tab. Before we were in the conversion tab, now we're moving over to the sequence tab. And in this instance, you want to start off with the dark flats first. Now you will notice you'll see dark flats underscore or dark underscore flats underscore .seq, which is a sequence file that we want to begin working with to begin creating the master calibration. And this was actually created when we were doing the conversion. So let me just show you quickly. If we go into the dark flats, or if we go into the process folder, you'll see, even though yes, there's the dark flats, you'll see this file here called dark underscore flats, and it's read by Siril. And this is a sequence file. So if you right click on it and select properties, you'll see that it's a .seq file, which is this actual file that we're working with. So now that we've selected this file, we go to the stacking tab, and the sequencing stacking method, we leave this as is, average stacking with rejection. For the normalization, we go and select no normalization. Everything else more or less remains at the default values. Windsorized, sigma clipping, weighting none, stacking images, all of the images, we leave all of these as default. The only thing that I like to do now is to change the save in sequence. So again, going back to when we were doing the automatic stacking, let me just quickly show you. We go back one and we go back to automatic. You'll see that in the automatic stacking, it created a masters folder. And that's what we want to do here on this one for the manual process. We're just going to create a folder called masters. All right, and if we go back to Siril, we're going to point to that folder that we just created, and you do this by going to two dots, backslash, masters, backslash. So that's going to tell Siril, save the master dark flat inside of this folder, masters, and the sequence name underscore stacked. Right, so it's going to give the sequence name and the word stacked afterwards. So once you have this in place, and again, I just have it named as masters. You can put whatever name that you want. But in this instance, we're trying to keep things as simple as possible. So we click on start stacking, and we now is going to begin creating the master dark flat. Right, so the stacking is complete. And if we go back and we go into the masters folder, we see that dark flats underscore stacked dot fit has been created, just as we spoke about. So we've selected the path in which the file will be saved, which was the masters, and the name of the file, which was dark underscore flat underscore stacked dot fit. So this is now our master dark flat. Up next, we're going to do the master flat frame. And we do this now by going into sequence, selecting the flats.seq file, and we've explained before how do we get these files. All of these files are located in the process folder. So we select flats.seq, and in this instance we go to calibration and we select use bias, because what we're actually doing to create the master flat frames, you're calibrating it against or with the bias, the master bias that we created before. So we click on this folder and we select where the master bias is located. Right, and we go into the masters folder, and yes, that's where the dark flats, also known as a bias. In your instance it may be bias, but in my instance it's going to be the master dark flats. And we select this, we leave everything at default, we enable cosmetic correction, we enable CFA, because in this instance we are using color data. Everything else remains at default, and the output prefix is going to be pp underscore, which is basically, from my understanding, post processing. So we can leave that as is, we leave everything else at default, and we click on start calibration. Right, that didn't take too long, and that's what I like about Siril. It moves really quickly. So if we go now into our process folder and we scroll all the way down, you will see that Siril would have created the file pp underscore flats. So this is basically part one of continuing into creating your master flat frames. So we continue along, and this time we need to go to the sequence tab, and Siril would have already selected pp underscore flats for us. And this time we go to the stacking tab. Under normalization, we change it to multiplicative. Again, we leave everything else as is, and we change this once more because we wanted to go now the master flat frames to go inside of the masters folder. We go to what we did before, we select .. /masters /. So again, it's going to be created inside of that folder, and we're going to have our master flat frame stored or saved inside of there. Again, we leave everything else at default, and we begin by clicking start stacking. Right, and the stack is complete. Rejection stacking complete, as shown below here. So now if we go into the masters folder, we can see now that we have pp underscore flats underscore stacked. So now we have the dark flats masters and we have the flats masters. So of course that means you now need to go into do the darks. So that's going to be next. We're going to be stacking and creating the master dark frames. The master darks are pretty much similar to the master bias. So we go to the sequence tab, we select the darks sequence, and then we go to the stacking tab. We select average stacking with rejection as before. We ensure that no normalization is selected. Everything else remains at default. And of course, we create the path in which we want to save the master darks, which will be also where the master flats and the master dark flats are stored. So again, back in the masters folders, like I mentioned, everything else remains at default, and we click on start stacking. Right, and that has finished. And if we go now into the stacking, into the masters folder, we'll see that we have the darks stacked now created. Now it's time to focus on the light frames, and we're going to do that by calibration first. So calibrating the light frames. To do that, we first go to sequence. We select the lights sequence, ensure that that's the only one selected, lights underscore SEQ. We go over to calibration. We enable use dark. We click on the folder, and what we do, we select the master dark frames. Next, we click on use flat. We click on the folder and select the master flat frames. So now we have the the flats underscore stack and the darks underscore stack. We also select equalize CFA. We enable cosmetic correction, enable CFA data, leave everything else at default. And also below, because we're doing the lights, we now select debayer before saving. So ensure that this is selected, again, because you're working with color data. So debayer before saving, equalize CFA, and all of these settings remain at default. And we just click on start calibration. The image has been calibrated, and now if we go back into the process folder, we will see that we have pp underscore lights. Right, so that's where all of the calibrated images are. Next, it's time to register the image. We go to registration. Usually the default settings works pretty well. You can try different ones depending on your images, but usually global star alignment, deep sky works. Registration channel, in my instance, I have to select green because with a one-shot color camera, it's RGB. So the registration channel is going to be green because it's more green than red and blue. Transformation, again, I usually leave this at default as homography. You can try different options. I've seen other videos where some people use shift and it works, better than homography. Again, you can try it out, see which one works best for your images. Register all images, we leave that at default. We leave everything as is. Manual registration, we don't need to do anything here, and we can just go to register. The registration process is complete, and now that all of the stars have been aligned, if you just quickly go back into the process folder and we scroll all the way down, you'll now see another list of files called r_pp_lights. So those that have the R means that's the registered images, so you know that your images were registered previously. And let me just show you one of the added benefits of having full control when you're doing the manual process of stacking images in Siril. Now that the images have been registered, you can go to the plot, and a graph appears in which you have now the opportunity to go through each of the registered images, and either you can keep some or discard some depending on the quality of them. So this one, the graph is displayed by the full width, half maximum measure, and by frames you can choose however you want it, whether it be by the stars, by the roundness, and you can change the X and Y values. Again, we're going to keep things simple. We're going to leave it as is, and just as an example, we're just going to right click on one of these images here and select show frame 21. You also have the option of excluding frame 21, from now when it's time to stack all of the images together, frame 21 will not be included. That's the option you have when you're using the plot feature in Siril. So we go to show frame 21, and these are all of the images that were registered that we saw before. And you now have the opportunity or the flexibility to choose which images that you want. You can scroll through each of them and choose what you want to keep and what you want to discard. So let's say, for example, I don't want this one. I can basically click on disable that option, and you'll see this X comes on, or this X would appear. Same thing if I were to right click on this image here and select exclude frame 22, that image will no longer be included. So if we go now to show, let's say just show frame 23, another one, we will see that 22 was excluded, and we can choose to include it or exclude it if we want to. And now it's time to move on to the final stage, which is stacking your registered images. So to do that, we go to the sequence tab, and we ensure that the r_pp lights.sequence file is selected. Remember, R for the registered, that's the one that we want to begin stacking. So to ensure that this is selected, we go to the stacking tab. We select average stacking with rejection, normalization. In this instance, we select additive with scaling. Usually that works for me. Again, you can try each of the different ones and see which one works best for you, but usually additive with scaling works. And when it's time to stack the registered images, Windsorized Sigma clipping, we leave that again at default. I've seen one or two people select generalize, extreme, studentize, deviate test. I haven't tried it out yet with Siril, but I've heard some people use it and it works really well. So you can try it again. You can try it and see if it works better for you. I'm going to leave it at Windsorized Sigma clipping, weighting at none. This time we select output normalization. We enable that. We enable RGB equalization. And then now, again, we're going to save it in that same masters folder. So we go back to, we select the backslash masters backslash. So everything now, or the final or the result, is going to be saved inside of here. And speaking of result, we can now take this off and have it renamed as result. So that way you can identify the final file named result, and it's going to be stored in the masters folder. And we click on start stacking. And there you have it, folks. This is your final stacked image with all of the calibration frames, all of the stars aligned. And this is where I mention again, you have full control as to the final result. And you've noticed that it's green. That's quite all right. That's because, again, we would have selected green as the main channel, and that's really because it's an RGB image that comes out of a one-shot color camera. So of course, in our next video, we're going to go through the process of processing the image to get how the image should actually look when you've processed it. So sometimes when you finish the stacking process, you may not see anything and may be blank, and that's because, again, auto stretch was not selected. So you may see it like this. You may just see maybe a few stars or just a blank screen. Don't worry. The main thing that you need to do is you go down to the linear option and you select auto stretch, and of course your image would appear. And there you have it, folks. We've covered both the automatic as well as the manual steps involved for calibrating and stacking your images. Let me know in the comments down below, which one do you prefer, the automatic or the manual process? And of course, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel so that you can be aware of many of the new videos that are coming out. And of course, the next video that's going to be coming out is part 3 where now we begin processing that same images that we stacked. So follow along. Part 1 we installed Siril. Part 2 we stacked the images that we captured along with the calibration frames. And part 3, which is the next video that's coming out, we're going to be processing that image so you can see that beautiful image that you spent so hard working on countless hours throughout the night, so you can finally see what you worked hard for. So again, thanks for watching Astro Island, and of course, it's not the size of the telescope that counts, it's how you use it. Bye for now everyone, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.